Y'all, level 170 is right around the corner, and one question that I've gotten like crazy is, what's the new best damage setup in Wizard101? Quite a lot is about to change, and also they're handling the rollout of gear in wallaru quite different than usual, so I want to make this video to answer all of your questions. The best damage setup, I would define that as either hitting your maximum allowed damage or, getting close enough while giving up the least other stats. So let's talk about the max damage that's gonna be available in Wizard101 this upcoming live round pack. So right now, if you log in a test run, what you might notice is that you can actually get up to 280 damage, but that 280 damage is the stat max for every school, given that you have access to the main world gear, right? The ones, like the hat, the robes, the boots, and the wand. But recently, KingsIsle announced that they're going to be only releasing the themes, the rings, and the amulets, and the decks, and all that, but not the main 4 pieces of gear that you expect to get at a final boss. They're going to be rolling these out in a dungeon. So what I'm going to do for this video is show y'all the best setup without this gear. In the test run Discord, they have confirmed that they are going to lower the stat maxes to accommodate for the fact that you won't have access to all this level 170 gear, when it comes to hats, robes, boots, and wands. So in test run, right now, yes, it'll say that 280 is the stat max, but when you actually subtract the increase in damage that they've added with all of this gear, you basically lose 4 damage. So presumably, the highest damage setup until the next dungeon comes out is going to be 276. And here's where it gets fun. This is a really, really high number compared to what we're used to. Right now, it's 220 in live realm. But the way you get there is still very, very similar to how you've always gotten there, right? You still have basically Aeon hat. You still have Nullity robe, which is from the raid. You still have Aeon boots. And yes, you can run Aeon wand. If I were to pick between Aeon wand and the new raid wand, I would pick the raid wand. And then to actually hit the stat max, you should try to get the new gear that is dropping in this upcoming update, right? The hats, robes, boots, and wands aren't dropping. Themes, rings, amulets, and decks are. And what's really fun about, I think, making this gear setup is that you just have these circle jewels that give damage, and you have these square jewels that give 500 HP. And the name of the game is to get 1 triangle socket because you need accuracy on any school that you do this on, and at least 5 circle jewels because you need about 50 damage from jewels to hit the max damage in PvE. So you have 2 circle jewels on your theme, you have 1 on your amulet, you have 1 on your ring, and you also have 1 on your deck. That's 50 damage from circle jewels. And with the gear set bonus on your pet and amount, that's how you hit the 276. I do feel like the fact that this exact combo, helping you hit max damage, I feel like it's a little intentional. I don't know how I feel about this, right? You basically made it so that Storm has to give up every resist talent to hit the max damage. So they have no tank ability to hit max damage, which is fine, right? There's trade-offs. Why hit max damage when you can have a little bit of resist for 8 less damage or something, right? That's a valid argument. But what I don't like is that in order to hit your max damage, you basically need a very specific pet that is a part of a fossil warrior set that requires crowns to get. In order to, utilize this pet and get the 6 extra damage from it, you need the fossil warrior set, which means you need a mount that you have to pay for. It's very worth noting. I think both stat maxes, before, you have the hat, robe, boots, and wand factored in, and after you factor it out, they both, bake in, to that max number. They bake in the pay to win a little bit. And I do think it's worth noting that this seems to be a conscious choice. You do need to pay for a pack if you want to hit the max damage. And I wish they would solve that issue at some point, and not have us buy a 5-year-old pack for 1 gear set bonus. I don't know, seems like a weird choice, even at level 170. And right now, there's no real use for tier jewels, so I'm just using the tier jewels from Novus. If that's still an option, and, when this becomes, a live realm update, then that is probably still the best tier jewel, right? Those 155s are still gonna be valuable if you happen to have them. And it's kind of nuts. Your HP is over 10k, your damage is over 270. It's not like you actually give up pip chance or accuracy for this. And considering they've added new AoEs that you can use first turn, you're gonna be doing way more damage than anyone used to do at level 170. It should be a lot easier to farm for stuff, to get jewels. I don't even think this world is honestly that hard. These stats are a crazy increase compared to what we're used to. And what I really like is that the deck gives a really cool blade that is pretty inaccessible for a casual player, but now they have access to it. And the new amulet also gives a blade, which isn't something we've had since Morgan. So this is a really good PvE setup. I would argue this is probably the most generous they've been with item cards when it comes to a high damage setup. setup. Now, the real question, in my opinion, in terms of whether there's going to be a W update or not, is really what they're going to do with different themes and rings that they start adding as time goes on. It looks like they're taking their sweet time adding the raid theme and, you know, the raid ring, raid amulet, all that from the new raid, because that's presumably the one that's going to have level 170 gear. But there's a chance that even this setup could be improved if you could replace some of those tier jewels, which are barely adding any, with circle jewels that give pierce or square jewels that give way more HP. So what's kind of nuts is that what you're looking at right now, which is the 276 max damage with over 10,000 HP on a storm alone, this might be like the weakest version of this. If you can access more circle jewels, you might be able to do this even better on other schools, because you will have more resist, you will have more HP, and having access to 1 or 2 more circle jewels, maybe from other templates, especially raid gear, which I assume might do it, you might be able to come up with setups that are even better. Although you don't really give up crit whatsoever with the setup, you do actually end up giving up pierce, because you might remember at level 160, all of these circle jewels would actually have pierce. So if you could, you know, trade out, I don't know, like a tier jewel for a circle, or even a square jewel for a circle, there might be a benefit to that, and we're gonna probably see that, right? Maybe the raid gear from the Crying Sky raid will do this when they update the level 170 gear from it. Maybe we'll get pack gear, maybe we'll get gauntlet gear, right? There's a lot of things they could do with this that could make us like have, you know, small changes to our setup that make for a better PvE experience every single update. I don't know, man, this feels kind of ambitious. I don't know, now that I'm really looking at it, I have some thoughts on this. One, is anything not gonna be one-shottable now? Because I feel like with such an increase in both your actual base spells damage and your actual base stats, is everything just, can you just like literally one-shot everything? Is that really the game that we want? And also, considering how game-changing these jewels are, how are we gonna get them? This is the other big question. I hope that the drop tables are somewhat generous, or there's some sort of pity system if I end up getting a bunch of circle jewels for a school I don't want. I think the pursuit for this much power could keep people very busy, but this kind of reminds me of like how pins used to work and how crazy this used to be to farm on every single school that you needed it on. There is one silver lining. None of these jewels are school specific, which I think is really important, other than the square ones that give HP. So like you can get a 10 damage, you know, storm circle jewel on like a myth. I don't know, if you're like questing on your myth and you happen to get it, you can actually like use it on your storm. So in that way alone, it should be a little bit more generous in terms of like, you know, farming than the pin system in Novus, which I think people were pretty like, you know, like annoyed with. All in all, y'all, I think a lot of people were very concerned that not getting wands, boots, robes, and hats from this update, they thought they would like, it would make this update like a lot worse. But if you really crunch the numbers, a school like Storm is only losing 4 damage and a little bit of resist, and every other school is losing similar stats. The real meat of this update is still gonna be the jewels, the themes, and all that. Like, you know, like anything you can put jewels on and the jewels themselves, that is the real power increase in this update. But let me know what you guys think about the actual value of the damage, how hard you want the jewels to be, what you guys think the raid gear should look like. Hopefully they update some of these things into the game in Test Realm or in Live Realm so we can answer the questions in a video, but we'll see until then. Turn on noties until those videos. As always, drop a like if you enjoyed, leave a sub for new, and if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something. I'll see y'all soon. I look forward to reading all y'all's thoughts and opinions. Stay awesome, and yeah.